So very excited to welcome our next guest to Off the Podium, an esteemed commentator right around the world. Started his career right here in Australia, one of the voices of motorsport in this country, among many other things he called. Went to the US, went overseas to the UK as well, and for the last decade or so has been the voice and face of NBC, including their Olympic coverage, track and field commentator, rowing, done skeleton, bobsled, you name it, he's done it, and he's still also the voice of motorsport in the country as well. And recently, a movie star, which we're going to get to as well in this interview. It's an absolute honour to welcome Off the Podium, Leigh Diffey. Leigh, welcome to Off the Podium.
Thanks, Ben. Yeah, really great to be part of the show. I've listened to lots of your episodes, so nice to be a part of it.
You're the one. You're the listener. Thank you for that.
Exactly, yeah.
I saw that. I was like, wow, what's going on there? Things have changed. Very, very exciting. We're going to start off just a little bit differently in this interview because just when we're recording this chat, you're about to call the esteemed Prefontaine Classic, which is happening this weekend. NBC, of course, showing that coverage. Now, I just want to start off with the question for our maybe Australian listeners who maybe aren't too familiar with what the Prefontaine Classic is, but give us an idea of just what that is for starters and how big of a deal this is in the track and field world.
Really big deal. And the name, for the non-track and field people, the name Prefontaine Classic comes from Steve Prefontaine, who was a legendary runner here in the United States, in Oregon, and sadly was taken from the world and the track and field world way too early through a car accident. Was just a legendary athlete and was very much, in lockstep with Bill Bowerman, one of the co-founders of Nike. One of the events this weekend will be the Bowerman Mile, which is if you win the Bowerman Mile, of course, it's not like winning an Olympic medal or a world championship, but it's something that you would hold very near and dear to your heart for the rest of your career and for the rest of your life. So the legend of Steve Prefontaine in Eugene is the town in Oregon, which is also the facility is called Hayward Field, which is on the grounds of the University of Oregon. It always makes me think of home of Australia because it's green and gold. Their colours are green and gold. So I always kind of have that funny feeling when I commentate there. But the legend of Steve Prefontaine is no bigger anywhere else than in Eugene, Oregon. There are images, there are murals, there are, as his nickname was, Pre. Pre is everywhere in Eugene. And so this is where the world comes to race. It is the official home of USA Track and Field in Eugene, Oregon. Nike footed the bill for a facility worth hundreds of millions of dollars. It's beautiful. Had the World Championships there. The National Championships will be there in the coming weeks. So Prefontaine, you can go around and dot wherever you like what is most important to you as an athlete. But if you're in track and field, you want to at least be competing at the Prefontaine Classic each and every year because it just, in addition to you going up against the world's best, there's that emotional attachment to do it at the home of track and field and the home of Nike, and it's just so special. So in a motor racing terms, it'd be like winning Bathurst.
You were literally I was about to ask that, like comparing it to motorsport categories, that's kind of like the prestige of it. And is it still, if I'm not mistaken, one of the few or the only event to still use the imperial measurements rather than the metric measurements when it comes to a lot of the events?
No, the events are traditional except for that one, for the mile.
Just for the mile.
It's like I'm talking to you from my home in Connecticut and just down the road in New York City. There's a famous indoor event where they race the Wanamaker Mile, and so the Bowerman Mile, and there's road racing championships here where quite often in the lead up to a track meet they'll have a road mile in the lead up in the days leading up to that. So and I mean we can talk about it later, but Faith Kipyegon, the legend, just went to try and break the 4-minute mile, and she came so close. She broke her own world record just a week ago. So, and Faith will be here this weekend in Oregon, so lots to look forward to.
And obviously other big names coming as well this weekend as well. A lot of Olympians, and this is a Diamond League meet as well. So who's on the bill right now, Leigh, and who can people expect to cheer on for?
Look, there are so many races. Actually, let me read from the entry list, which we just got sent today. So in the men's 100, unfortunately, no Noah Lyles, the Olympic champion, which is a bummer because Kashane Thompson, the guy who they went neck and neck with to the line, Kashane is coming, and Kashane just ran a 9.75 for the 100 in the Jamaican Championships. So, he's sixth fastest all time. So he's in great form. So it would have been great to see an Olympic final rematch between those two. He won't be there. Lockie Kennedy, the Australian, is the Olympic men's 200-meter champion, Letsili Tobogo, and Kenny Benarek. He'll be, so they kind of have an Olympic rematch as well. I won't go through the whole list, but there's so many that we are treated to in various races and disciplines where you have either the Olympic champion or you have the entire Olympic podium that will be appearing this weekend. So for myself and Addo Bolden and our entire on-air team, we are so excited about that because you get to see the best. Yes, it's part of the Diamond League, which for all the track fans listening, they know that's the round the world regular series in and around Olympics and world championships and national championships. But, this is almost like a mini Olympic field that we're getting treated to this weekend.
Could I ask, just you brought him up, just while we're on the topic, Addo Bolden, what's that like calling next to a legend like that? I mean, I can imagine it's always fun.
Well, I shouldn't say I'm really spoiled to be working with this group because right beside me is Addo Bolden, 4-time Olympic medalist. He still holds the Commonwealth Games 100-meter record of a 9.88, I think, from memory. So he won 2 silver, 2 bronze in the 100 and 200. Then alongside Addo is Sonia Richards-Ross, 4-time Olympic gold medalist and just an absolute legend. Unfortunately, we don't have Son this weekend because she just gave birth to her 3rd child. So we on our track and field text group chain, we're all congratulating her today. We have distance running legend Cara Goucher. We have Trey Hardy, who is an Olympic silver medalist and 2-time world champion in the decathlon. Lewis Johnson, who is a former runner. Excuse me. Paul Swangard, who calls track and field around the world. We have such a really tight-knit crew. And so to answer your question, getting to work alongside, like shoulder to shoulder with Addo and Sonia and Cara is really quite amazing. And I love when we're on air, but I love the off air because I'll ask them a lot of different things about their careers or their, things that happened or rivalries or what have you. And these are athletes who have gone up against the best and they have quite remarkable stories. So I feel very spoiled to be part of that crew.
And in return, did they ask you about your time hosting Sports Tonight and how much that is missed in the Australian television landscape and that we should be bringing it back, right?
That would be great. Sports Tonight was such a special show, just period, for the Australian audience. And to have worked on it as a, when I got my start in TV and I was a freelance reporter on it. And then in later years being able to be one of the hosts, that was a real treat. So they don't know about Sports Tonight, but
they should.
They do know a lot about Australia, and they love the Australian people just in general. But they love the Australian track and field fraternity and fan base, and they all have very great memories of competing in Australia, whether that be at the 2000 Games or just in general.
In terms of just NBC, well-oiled machine. I mean, obviously, just the home of the Olympics, which we'll touch on, but to be able to sort of still do events like this. I mean, we'll get to sort of how you got into the Olympics a little bit later, Leigh, but I mean, these sort of just always pinch your moments, have that peacock on your chest and, be the voice of such an iconic meet, obviously, this weekend.
Yeah, it really is. I've been with NBC now for 13 years and it hasn't lost any of its luster just because of the size of the company and the magnitude of our Olympic effort. When you go to a games and you have all of the other broadcasters around the world there, if you were to put them in a shoebox, almost half of that shoebox is NBC's effort and the other half is the rest of the world. And that gives you an idea of the magnitude of the effort and how important the games are to NBC. And we've just extended our current agreement. It ran through 2032, and it's gone years beyond that now. And there's a really tight-knit relationship between NBC, our parent company, which is Comcast, and the IOC. And it means a lot. And look, I don't think I'm talking out of school. I think everybody realized that in years gone by, just the general interest level or enthusiasm level about the games had waned a little bit, and that was quite worrying, quite alarming. But boy, did they come back in Paris. And our executives rolled the dice on quite a few things and some big budget things, and I think it was the perfect storm in a positive way, meaning it was the Summer Games, it was Paris, the city that everybody loves, the performances that happened, the venues, having the beach volleyball, under the Eiffel Tower, having equestrian at Versailles, where we were at track and field at Stade de France, which is so steeped in history in so many different sports. And just everybody was in a good mood. And so I like to say that Paris was the games that made everybody fall back in love with the Olympics. So I think we've come off a plateau, and where the trajectory is upwards again, which feels really good.
Of course, LA next, which we can't imagine is just going to be nothing short of massive. And then 4 years later, you get to come home, Leigh. You get to come to Brisbane. I'm not trying to preempt.
Tell me what's happening. Do they have it all together?
I think they've finally
making good progress.
I think they've finally managed to work out what the hell they're doing a little bit there. Not to take away from LA and how special that will be, but I'm sure you can't help but not think forward a little bit to get to call an Olympic Games in your own backyard, your literal backyard, Leigh.
Yeah, I know. Well, as I sit here right now at home in Connecticut, my 82-year-old mum is here from Brisbane.
Wow.
So, and we've spoken about that. So just to say, can you believe it? We born and raised in Brisbane, and my mum is a Queenslander as well. And it's pretty crazy to think about it this far out. But getting a little bit closer for it to become a reality, that would be really special. And then that would also double as my 10th game. Wow. So that kind of has a nice ring to it.
Yeah, raise the bat a little bit there. That's almost like a century in Olympic coverage, isn't it? 10 Olympics. I think that kind of goes that way.
Yeah, something like that.
Something like that. For people who are in the States and people who get NBC who want to watch and tune in for the Prefontaine, sort of when does the coverage kick off and how can they tune in?
It is Saturday afternoon. Streaming on Peacock, but it's also on network television on what I like to call Big NBC. So from 3 p.m. Eastern onwards.
Beautiful.
So really looking forward to that.
Big NBC. I'm going to use that. I like that.
Well, where that nickname derived from was we had a sports channel, a cable sports channel for many years called NBCSN, which was NBC Sports Network. So when people would always ask us, "Hey, is Formula One on NBC? Where's Formula One this weekend? Or where's IndyCar? Or where can you watch track and field?" And so just to kind of distinguish, we would say, "Oh no, this weekend it's on NBCSN," or "This weekend, no, it's on Big NBC." So I kind of, even though that's not relevant anymore, I haven't kind of lost that saying.
Still works. People know what you're talking about, right? Before we also transition back to the Olympics, the other thing I want to touch on at the beginning of this chat, because this is so relevant right now and so exciting for the fact that when I saw this about 10 days ago, I'm like, there's Leigh Diffey. Look at him. You're a movie star now, Leigh. You're in F1 the movie. I just let's get this over and done with. How on earth does this opportunity come about? Is this just, hey, get that guy from NBC to hang out with Brad Pitt? Or are you going like, no, I want to be in the movie?
Well, it came about through an old friend in motorsport, a guy called Tim Bampton, who a few years ago, he was the head of PR for McLaren Racing, both on the Formula One side and the IndyCar side of things. I met Tim Bampton, through one of my old producers at Channel 10 way back in the day, Scott Young.
Wow.
After Scott left Australia, he went on to become the head of F1 on Sky Sports. He has since moved on. And Tim Bampton was needed some contact for people in the US when McLaren was buying more and more into a current IndyCar team. And he said, "Oh, you need to talk to my buddy Leigh Diffey. He's on the broadcast, blah, blah, blah." So I met Tim. We became mates, hung out for years at the races on IndyCar. And then he left McLaren Racing, took some time off, and he rang me out of the blue one day and he said, "Diff," he said, "Hey, I've got to tell you about this pretty cool new gig that I've got, and it also involves you." I said, "What?" And he said, "I've been hired to be a consultant, kind of like the conduit between Apple Studios, Joseph Kosinski and Jerry Brockheimer, the director and producer, and Formula One. So I'm kind of the man in the middle, helping grease the wheels, pardon the pun, like make sure everything runs smoothly between Hollywood and Formula One." And he said they're looking for, there's going to be a part in it that involves the Rolex 24 at Daytona. They wanted to know who should we get as a commentator, and he said there's only one guy, Leigh Diffey. And so I owe it all to Tim.
Wow. How do you react to that? All of a sudden calling out to be in a movie with Brad Pitt, of all people.
I know. I didn't get to meet him, unfortunately. Lots of my friends did. I've got some other friends who were in the movie. And actually, a really old mate of mine, Patrick Long, was Brad's driver coach, and spent a lot of time with him. Has so many great things to say about him, and in addition, had really great things to say about Brad's driving. When you, excuse me, I got a bit of frog in my throat today. When you watch the movie and there's that scene at Daytona where the Chip Hart Racing Porsche comes into pit lane and it's time for a driver change, and they ask Brad to come out, and he comes out to pit lane and has a drink, has something to eat, and then it's time to get in. The guy that gets out of the car, that's Patrick Long, who is a legit sports car, in this country legend. He's won Rolex 24, he's won Le Mans, he's won Sebring, he's won all the big ones, and he's an iconic Porsche driver. And so he and Brad became pretty good mates and still do. And also Patrick Long is the guy behind Patrick Dempsey's success as well.
Mm-hmm.
So he and Patrick have done a lot of driving together and a lot of training and coaching and things like that. So I'm glad you enjoyed it. And when I got to see it, I was really, really, of course, there's elements of Hollywood to it. It's a Hollywood movie, but I was really impressed, sometimes blown away by the authenticity of it and the camera angles, and they just did a really, really great job.
I legitimately went into it, Leigh, expecting the worst, kind of, as a lifelong fan, thinking that this is just going to be like so over the top. We remember the movie Driven, of course, and we're like, oh God, here we go. But I legitimately was in love with this film. I mean, it's very Hollywood in parts, but it really just captured so much of the sport, and also just in terms of a summer blockbuster, it felt like one of those movies we grew up with that, just didn't need to be something that we get today. It was just fun, wasn't it?
Thankfully, there were no elements of Driven in it.
No. no one driving race cars through the streets of Chicago, right? Blowing up women's dresses along the way. How long are you on set for? Like, is it sort of a one-day thing you go into a booth, or is it multiple days?
Not even. It was for my part. And, obviously my part on camera is blink and you miss it. But, hey, I'm still happy to be on there. But I was pleasantly surprised. They used a lot more of my voice than I thought. And they did it for real at Daytona during the race.
Wow.
So they asked for my commentator schedule, because we have two teams of people that rotate on and off because of the duration of the race. I came off air at midnight, and they literally built a copycat booth right alongside ours, right alongside the NBC one at Daytona.
Wow.
And it was a vacant corporate suite. And while we were on air during commercial breaks, we were looking over and watching the crew just feverishly build this thing. And as soon as I came off air, I still had the same sports jacket and the same shirt and tie, and I just literally walked out of the commentary booth around and into the corporate suite and met with director Joe Kosinski, who I'd had numerous Zoom meetings with and phone calls. And he's like, "Good. How's the race going for you guys? Blah, blah, blah. You good with your lines?" "Yep." "Okay, sit down, makeup, come in." Brief chat. They did some lighting checks and some sound checks. And he's like, "Leigh, are you happy? Does this look legit enough? Is it kind of like what you've got there?" And I said, "Yeah, sure." And it was to live the the experience of quiet on the set and action. That was pretty cool. That was stuff we all pretend and we wish we could be a part of, and to do it for real was really neat.
Now, are you one take Diffy, or did you have to do it in a couple of takes?
Yeah, I didn't blow my lines. but I had to do them over and over again for different portions and different reasons and different inflections, different energy levels. And then I keep referring to the authenticity factor. Joseph Kosinski, when we got ready to go, there was a caution on the track, and he's like, "Let's everybody just take 5, relax, and Leigh, how many laps do you think it'll go before we're going to go back to racing?" And he purposely waited until there was racing on track. And look, that's kind of like a sweeping shot that comes past me on my left-hand side. But even if you just to be able to look out of the glass windows at the front and just to see cars actually racing on track, that's what he wanted to capture.
Wow.
And even though it's a really quick shot, that's how his attention to detail was at that level.
And was this 2023 or 2024 race that they
2024.
2024 they did that? Fantastic. Wow. Just an experience again, like to sort of think I can imagine, we'll get to sort of how you got into your career like that was something that you can never imagine you're going to do. Like, I'm sure you watched Driven back in 2001 and didn't think that, in 24 years' time, I'm going to be in the better version of this.
Yeah. And I just, even closer than that was Talladega Nights, which is so legendary and so funny. I think my sons have watched it about 40 times and they can roll off all the lines. But in that movie, there was an element of back in the old Speed Channel days, and I worked for Speed for a decade. We would do a Sunday night program called Speed News, which was like an all-encompassing. It was kind of like Sports Tonight, but for racing. And 2 of my old colleagues were sitting on the set of Speed News, and they were doing that. And I thought, wouldn't that be great to be in a movie one day? Like I was bummed I wasn't in that. And all these years later, it came to fruition.
Is it hard to kind of get in that mindset of commentating something fictional, and like, are you sort of aware that the cameras are there and you've got Joseph Krasinski there and like the pressure, or do you just sort of click the switch, you're in commentary mode and it just feels natural?
It was I would say 75% natural, and some of the lines were lines that I wouldn't necessarily say in commentary. There's a funny one there that says, it looks like Sonny Hayes has left his brakes at home. I wouldn't say that, but it was good. I mean, it was odd to be. It was quite a dark room, and the lighting was very specific, and you're very aware of how many people are around you and where the famous Hollywood director is and things like that. But I could kind of not cheat it in a way, but block that out because they wanted me to look down at the track and say my lines, and I had like the timing and scoring and the monitor in front of me, but then try and pretend that I was looking down on the track almost like a PA announcer type thing. And so that was by doing that was easy to block out who was in the room and what it was all about.
I think you should use that line, just sneak it into, the Prefontaine this week, and just as a bit of a reference, an in-joke maybe to see how it would sound in an actual event. When you saw the movie, were you hopeful that you would make FaceTime, or it was just your voice? It kind of, what's that like when you actually see yourself on screen? Because I know I was with my mate in the cinema and we go, "Hey, this is Leigh!" Like we could hear your voice, but then when we saw you, we got very excited.
Well, I didn't know until probably a week or so before the worldwide premiere, where they put it out in a promo on social media, and I was like, okay, it did make it. That's pretty cool.
There you go. And you officially now have a Kevin Bacon number of 1 to Brad Pitt. So just saying,
there you go.
Put that on the resume moving forward. Now,
do you know the bummer about it all?
Please tell me.
There's only one disappointing aspect to it all. I was invited to go to the worldwide premiere in New York City, which is only about an hour down the road from where I'm sitting now. And it was on Monday, the 16th of June. And that weekend, I was in Le Mans. And so I'd arranged to meet my wife there. My wife and I were going to walk the red carpet and then sit, in the theater and watch the worldwide premiere, which I was so excited about. And on the way back from Le Mans, my flight got cancelled.
Damn. Oh.
And so I didn't get to go to the worldwide premiere. My wife went, but she didn't walk the red carpet. She was too shy to do that, so she just went in. She just went into the theater and watched it. But she said it was pretty cool. She was sitting, pretty close to all the superstars. So she had a great time. I had to wait until just last week to watch it. But that was also good because my mum arrived from Australia and our two sons, we have teenage sons. The five of us went to our local movie theater here in Connecticut and we watched it. And that was really special to share that with my whole family.
You got that moment, but I mean, this is just
Yeah,
that, like,
yeah.
I just want you to name and shame the airline. Like, come on. Like, I was meant to go to a New York red carpet premiere in Times Square. I was this close. Oh,
I
wow.
know. That probably really won't happen again, unfortunately. But
F1 the movie too, Lee. Come on, you'll be there when they do the Olympics the movie.
Knock on wood.
Surely your voice will be out there for Olympics the movie, I guess, if they end up ever doing that. I want to backtrack though to your beginning in the commentary box, because I believe you started as a physical education teacher and then transitioned into broadcasting. Was this sort of something that when you were younger that you had looked at? I mean, how do you get involved in broadcasting?
No, I didn't. Never even was on my radar at all as a teenager or a young adult. I thought I was going to, because at high school I studied agriculture, horticulture, animal husbandry, all that. I thought I was going to end up in agriculture somehow, in farming, an ag economist, or I thought I was going to end up in the rural community. Even though I grew up in the burbs, I loved farming, agriculture, all of that. I'd go to summer schools at, like the what's now University of Queensland in Gatton, but back then it was Gatton Ag College. I went to another one up in central Queensland in Emerald, and that whole thing. I worked on a farm nearby where I grew up. I just thought that was my life. As a kid, I raced dirt bikes. I wasn't very good, but I loved it. And I stopped when I was, kind of in my late teens, and then I went off to uni and studied PE teaching, and then I only did that for a little while. But when I stopped racing, my older brother continued racing, and we had that was our life. It'd be like if you played footy or cricket, you hung around with your mates there, and I still hung around that group, and I knew all the riders. And it was at Tivoli Raceway outside of Ipswich. And the club president just said, "Oh, young fella, you seem pretty confident with a microphone in your hand. We've seen you make some speeches. We need an announcer for this weekend, and we'll pay you $60." And I was at college, and I was only 20 years old, and I was like, $60? Yeah, I'll take that. and that was where it began, and it's kind of almost like an accidental career.
And here you are now in a movie calling the Olympics. All these kind of things that play out that way. Do you remember that first call? Did you enjoy it? Was it just like duck to water? You fell in love?
Yeah, because I think when I would watch my brother race and watch all of our mates race, I think I probably did in my own head commentary from the side of the track. I guess I don't know. And when I started, it came quite naturally. It was a long day. The races were only 4 laps long, but I called over 90 races.
Wow.
That first day.
Wow.
And out in the hot Queensland sun, sitting in a wooden shack basically on the edge of the track, and I had a microphone, a wireless radio, and like a can of Coke, and off you go. And so and then my parents and my parents' friends and other people, some of my mates who rode, their parents, everyone would give you their 2 cents worth, like oh, try this next time, or that was good, or we like that, or we didn't like that. And then it just grew naturally. The guys who were the promoters, so I started in Ipswich, then the guys who were the promoters at a racetrack in Toowoomba called Echo Valley, which is where Aussie IndyCar legend and Indy 500 winner and champion Will Power first raced a car on dirt. I went to Echo Valley in Toowoomba, and then some other promoters from Ballina and northern New South Wales, they asked me to go down there, and it just kind of grew like that. And I don't know, I was only 20. I might have done 3 in the first year, and then in the second year I did 6, and then or maybe it was more than that, but it grew very quickly to the point where if I started at 20, and by the age of 25 I was already in TV.
Wow.
So it
What a
happened
journey.
very quickly.
Yeah. Do you remember what you did with the $60? The first $60 you got?
No, I have no idea. I wish I still had it.
Wasn't one of these ones that you framed it or something like that, you know, the first dollar on the wall or something along those lines. So, you know, I mean, $60 in college, that's a lot of money, right? You know?
I know. I probably took one of my mates to the pub or something.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Keep going that way. The journey then sort of progressing, you know, going up the ranks, you said quite quickly, end up with Channel 10. There's doing a lot of the sports stuff there, a lot of motorsport coverage there, supercar coverage in this country for quite some time. You even did the Sydney to Hobart a few years. Leigh, that would have been fun. My home city of Hobart all the way down there. I mean, what were your favourite memories of that period? Because, I mean, again, most people in Australia think motorsport. They think Channel 10, the home of motorsport for so long in this country.
Yeah. We were really lucky to have some incredibly driven people in management at Channel 10 who loved motorsport. When I started, there was this little old Scottish gentleman called Mike Ordsent. Sadly, he's no longer with us, and Audie gave me my start. And he was towards the end of his career, and he was, I don't want to say replaced, but because he didn't leave when this happened, but a gentleman by the name of David White came in. And David is from Tasmania, from your home state. And David had a massive motorsport passion. David is also the gentleman who he was the impetus and the energy behind One HD.
Ah, yes.
And so David was the guy who, in all of those years of all of that, because when we first started on Channel 10, it wasn't called V8 Supercars. It was still called the Australian Touring Car Championship in 1997. Didn't become V8 Supercars until 98. And, you know, it was myself, Barry Sheen, and Mark Osler were the commentary team. And anyway, going back to David, he was the driving force behind that. We had RPM. I mentioned Scott Young earlier, who now is an executive with a massive role in Europe on with Warner Brothers Discovery. But you know, he was the driving force behind RPM, and we just had great people. Bill Woods, my childhood, my oldest friend in life, Daryl Beattie. You know, we grew up in the same suburb together.
You raced against him, didn't you, for a while?
Yeah. But wow, he didn't. I didn't race against him. I was in the same race. He was so good. My brother's 6 years older than me. Daryl was so good. He would race against my brother's age group. That's how good Daryl was.
There you go.
And as we know, he went on to almost be MotoGP world champion and number 2 in the world to Mick Doohan at that time. I think my fondest memories back there, mate, were the people. You know, working, and I got to do both. I got to work in the newsroom on Sports Tonight, and then I got to work in production on all those other things you mentioned. And it was just the people. And to this day, so many of us are still in touch with each other, whether it be production managers or editors or producers or the on-air talent. We are. It was a really special group. And next year will be 20 years since we signed off from the V8 Supercars at Phillip Island.
Wow.
In 2006, and that blows my mind that has flashed by that fast.
Yeah, that's crazy. That's insane to think that it's been that long. Because I mean, my childhood growing up watching 10. I mean, we had it was mixed back in Tassie with Southern Cross, of course, and they flicked it over to Tasmanian digital television when we switched over to that. But you know, it was just childhood and growing up as an F1 fan when 10 picked up the rights and watching you guys in the living room switch over from the Darryl Eastlake days into watching people like yourself, all those long lines. It was childhood memories. I'm sure you get that a lot when you come back to Australia. A lot of people say you were in my living room growing up, or watching motorsport in Australia.
Yeah, well, now I'm getting it here, which isn't good because it's a sign that I'm getting older. I was working with some folks recently, and this guy said to me, well, first of all, he called me Mr. Diffey, so that made me feel old, and then he said, it's so nice to be with you. I grew up with you, watching you call Formula One on NBC.
Wow,
like, come on.
Jeez.
Come on,
that was like 12 years ago. Come on.
Anyway.
Wow, that's crazy. There's a transition there must be, though, I think, from people on Channel 10 Motorsport into the Olympics. Because we had Matt White on many years ago on this show. And, of course, he did some Olympics for Channel 7 when he went over there as well. And then you eventually end up at NBC where you end up doing the Olympics. Your first games at Sochi where you're doing sports such as skeleton, bobsleigh, luge. Tell us about how this call came for you to do the Olympics. And again, back to what I similar asked with the movie, could you ever imagine that you would be calling the Olympics, Leigh Diffey?
No, never, ever, ever. That's really easy. That comes down to one man who is my boss at NBC, my big boss, Sam Flood. And when I came over to NBC from Speed Channel, he just said, okay, listen, you're primarily coming here for Formula One and IndyCar, but you can call racing. And so that we are not going to restrict you to just calling motor racing. So we're going to throw a few things at you and let's see what sticks. But we're not signing you up for 4 years just to sit around. You're going to do motorsport and you're going to do Olympics as well, and we'll tell you what you're going to do. So it's kind of when people ask me, oh, you do so many different things on NBC. Well, I don't really get a choice. They tell me what I'm doing. You can ask, you can lobby, you can suggest, but at the end of the day, your bosses tell you what you're going to do. And they're like, okay, we think this is going to be a good fit, which is fast, which is like motorsport, and that's bobsled, skeleton, and luge. And they put me on, I did one World Cup luge event before I went to the Olympics.
Wow.
Just to learn the cadence of it, to get the feel. I was working alongside a guy called Duncan Kennedy, who was the first US man to ever win a World Cup medal. And he was really helpful to me. And it was good. I was like, wow, this is pretty intoxicating. Like, it's fast and it happens and you got to be really on your toes. And, going from anything from calling a 24-hour sports car race or a 2-hour Formula One Grand Prix to calling a 38-second luge run, or bobsled run or skeleton, it taught me a whole, different cadence of racing in a different way. And, there's two of you that has to fit in everything you've got to say in 38 seconds, and, I'm doing what a play-by-play does. Duncan was analyzing what the athlete was doing on the ice, and all of that happens in just over half a minute. It was pretty wild. So to your point, I never thought I would ever call the Olympics, and I certainly never thought I'd ever call the Olympics in Russia. Yeah. So there was a double whammy there.
Did you actually go to Russia, or were you calling it on? You were there on the ground. Yeah. Wow. I mean, that's a whole episode in itself, Leigh. We always find that with anybody from Sochi on this show that there's many, many stories. But I mean, was there a standout moment for you getting to experience the Olympic Games in Russia back in 2014?
I think it was on the last day. I know it was on the last day. I'm just trying to think of all the different things that happened to us. The first day, like when I was walking from the production facility to the booth, and I didn't have any of my colleagues with me. I was just by myself, and that's when it dawned on me. I was like, "Oh my goodness, you're going to call the Olympics!" So that was a great moment. And the other really just kind of confronting moment, I guess, was on the last day. We were going live. We were, I think, the last event, which was the men's bobsled, and Alexander Zubkov, who ended up winning gold in both the 2-man and 4-man, very, very good friends of Putin. He ended up getting those gold medals stripped because he failed the drug test. It was rumored that Putin was coming to the Sankey Sliding Center to watch Zubkov race, and myself and my colleague John Morgan, who's Mr. Bobsled, he was in his own movie. He was in Cool Runnings. He was a consultant for Cool Runnings, and he got to work alongside John Candy, and so John was in that movie, which he still talks about to this day. So John and I are standing kind of on the veranda outside the commentary booth, and when you're somewhere for 2 straight weeks, you get to know everybody's colours and where they move to and where they're going, and the Canadians are there, and the Brits, the BBC's there, and these people here, and we're standing out, and we're looking at the camera, getting ready to go live, and I see this big splash of like army green out of my right eye, and I look over, and there's 6 dudes walking with rifle bags, and one guy at the head of the pack with a radio. And I kind of put my hand up and say, "Stop! You're about to walk through our shot." And he's like, "No, we're going where we want to go." And they were the 6 snipers walked straight between John, the camera, and myself up on top of our roof of the entire broadcast building, which was a temporary building, and they all set their tripods up because the rumor was that Putin was coming in.
Wow!
And Instead, it was the Prime Minister then, Medvedev, who came in this big booming chopper and landed right there, right in front of us, got out, and he was watching Zubkov race
Wow.
for Russian victory. And I was looking at John and I said, "Oh, you've been around this sport for decades. I bet you've never seen anything like that." And he's like, "No, that was a first."
Wow. I mean, you at least
Yeah.
know somebody's coming when all that level of
Oh
security is
yeah.
coming that way.
Yeah.
So,
I said,
wow.
"Well, look, hey, at least we know we're in the safest place."
Yeah, well, exactly right. You've got all that protection going on there. What an incredible story. Wow. I mean, that leads on after Sochi. You do Rio, you do rowing, you go back to Pyeongchang, then you eventually get to track and field, which you do,
Mhm.
of course, in Tokyo and Paris, which obviously we touched on before, working with people like Addo Bolt and everything along those lines. I mean, was that a simple case of, again, getting the tap on the shoulder, Leigh, you're doing track and field, or was this one of these ones that maybe you would wanted to do and you sort of put in a couple of notes to NBC going, hey, I wouldn't mind doing a bit of track and field if that ever comes about?
I did 3 meets really early in my time at NBC. I did my first ever track meet was one called the Penn Relays, which is just chaos, absolute chaos. It goes for days, basically almost goes for a week. They have some colossal number of athletes from school kids all the way up to the veterans class, like people running in their 70s, 80s, and 90s. I think they have something like 20,000 athletes over the
Wow.
course of the 5 days run, and then they get into the pro class. And Addo said to me, and that was the first time I'd ever met Addo, and Addo looked at me and he goes, "So how much track and field have you done?" I said, "This is my first," and his eyes just went like this. He said, "They've really thrown you into the lion's nest here." And anyway, I survived, and we became friends instantly. And then I did a couple of Diamond League events after that, and then motorsport just my schedule was crazy. Um, we had the incumbent, who's an absolute legend of broadcasting over here, was a gentleman called Tom Hammond, and Tom was doing everything from he'd been the voice of track and field since the early '90s. He was on horse racing, he was on Notre Dame football, he was on everything. And Tom's just such a lovely man, a great broadcaster. But he was nearing retirement, and so over a handful of years, they were looking at a variety of people as to, okay, well, who's gonna take over, who's gonna grab the baton from Tom. And so it was in 2018 that they started asking me to do some more meets and different things, and that was like Drake relays out in Iowa. I was doing some national meets. I was doing a variety of things, all leading up to the 2019 World Championships in Doha, which was a fantastic experience. And I think that was kind of like I had almost 2 years of, I don't want to call it rehearsals, but 2 years of showing that I could grow into the role, or, as you well know, track and field has its own lexicon. You got to use the right terminology. You got to use the right words. You got to know the history. And so I worked really, really hard, and relished those opportunities that they gave me. And it was after the Doha World Championships. They're like, okay, you got the nod. You're going to be off to Tokyo.
Wow.
So, as I have done whenever I take over a role from somebody who has been in there a long time, it's happened to me a lot in motorsport. But to follow in Tom Hammond's footsteps, they're huge shoes to fill. And I always either send them an email, or I give them a phone call and just say, it's not lost on me what opportunity has been given to me, and I will do my best to do you proud. And he really appreciated that. And I just think that, I'm not a young man anymore, but when you follow in legends' footsteps, I think it's very important to show the proper reverence and respect.
Great way of looking at it. That's the very good way of looking at it. I always wonder with commentators in terms of, you're there to do a job. You're obviously there to neutral, call a sport, call a game. But things like the Olympics, you can't help but get a little bit passionate, a bit nationalistic, a bit proud of your own country. You're an Australian broadcasting for an American network. Are you sometimes sort of torn? Because obviously you've kind of got to be the voice of the American people and be excited when an American wins. But if you're in a situation, and maybe doesn't often happen in track and field, where an Australian is perhaps ahead of an American, do you have to try and curtail that a little bit, Leigh, and go, oh, no, this is, put the Aussie pride aside and, realize who I'm calling for right now?
I don't know. I'll tell you when I get to commentate on Gout Gout.
Yeah, hey, there you go. That's a good answer for it. I mean, I'll reverse that. I mean, back, say, 2016, you're doing rowing. I'm not sure if you call Kim Brennan, for example, winning the gold. But, like, is that, like, again, you're calling for an American broadcaster, but it's an Australian winning gold. I mean, how do you react sort of in that moment?
Well, I react the way that I'm supposed to react, right? Because as a professional, you can't show bias. Inside, it's certainly stirring the emotions inside. But look, I've had lots of practice on commentating on Friends. I commentated on Mark Webber in Formula One for ages, commentated on Friends in IndyCar, commentated on, my oldest mate in life, Darryl Beattie, in MotoGP. So Friends in Supercross and Motocross. So I've had plenty of practice at not letting your personal affiliations or friendships or passion, spill over into then becoming biased. It's hard, because you want the Aussies to succeed, and but at the same time, I have to always remember that I'm working for an American, the biggest Olympic broadcaster in the world that is American, that has a very specific attention to detail on the American athletes, because that's who the American audience want to watch. And so, it's an interesting one. And honestly, it will be interesting to experience that in a different sport at a different level if Gout continues on the trajectory that he's on. Yeah. Unfortunately, I'm going to miss the World Championships this year because it clashes with my NASCAR commitment. So we take over. There are multiple broadcasters that do NASCAR in the US, and our portion of the year is the biggest portion, which is the last portion of the year. We do 4 regular season races, and then we do the 10 playoffs. So when I'm in the midst of that, unfortunately, that clashes with the World Championships in Tokyo, which I believe Gout's going to run at. So I'll be watching from afar.
As we all will be. We're seeing how Gout goes. Just quickly, just on NASCAR, actually, I wanted to ask that at the end, but I mean, how are you finding NASCAR? Obviously, you're the voice of NASCAR now for NBC, as you're touching on there. I mean, much of a transition really coming from open wheel into something like NASCAR at all, and are you enjoying it?
Yeah. I'm really enjoying it. Love it. It's completely different. I was fortunate to kind of dip my toe in the water a little bit many years previous. So around 2016, 2017, I did some Xfinity races, and then I did some more Xfinity races in 2017. And I did 2 Cup races. And so I'm glad I did that, even though it was a long time ago. It kind of softened the blow, or softened the shock a little bit of going back there, because it was a super busy year last year. I had my started the year with Supercross, then did IMSA, then the IndyCar complement of the year, Olympic trials, off to the Olympics, come back 1 weekend off, straight into NASCAR. Wow. So it was the busiest year of my life, busiest year of my career by a long way, and a lot of pressure too, because over the years I've got used to the fact that I still talk like an Australian, and that's very noticeable over here. And so for the Indy 500, Sir Jackie Stewart had commentated, but as an analyst. Sir Jackie Stewart and David Hobbs had done NASCAR, but as analysts. And so as the things go on over the years of my career here, I have become the first foreign voice play-by-play on X, Y, and Z, but also the first Australian. And so I was very cognizant of that fact, that in the 75-year history of NASCAR, I would be the first foreign voice play-by-play announcer. And that brings with it a little bit of an extra heavy load. So I made sure I worked extra hard to be prepped and ready for it. I frankly was blown away by the openness of the garage area. I didn't get to meet every single person that I needed to, but the people I did meet were incredibly warm and welcoming, and not just inside the garage area, but the fan base, the fans that I was able to meet and mix and mingle with, and met at different tracks, and tracks that I'd never been to before. It was a really I look back on that, and I will always look back on those 12 weeks as just a fantastic time, and that makes me even more excited about this year, getting to do two more, and my second season around, and so there'll be less black holes, and more just genuine excitement to because I know what I'm going into now.
Yeah, for sure. And NASCAR's just fun, right? That's
Yeah.
it's a fun series
Yeah.
to kind of to follow on there. Leigh, we're going to get to a set of 10 questions I'd like to close out with all of our interviews with, but two quick things I just want to touch on. You mentioned him before, being in the Prefontaine meet this weekend, Kashane Thompson. Paris last year, obviously what happened with the commentary. You came out and you admitted the mistake. I mean, was that something that straight away when the result came up with Noah that you kind of like, what have I done? Or is it sort of you just put that back in your mind and then later on have a bit of a joke about it on social media and move on?
Well, it certainly didn't feel good, but I, called that race as I called every other race, and I certainly wasn't the only one in the world who thought that he'd won. And as I mentioned on social media, I was too bold, and to call it that quickly. I mean, even Noah Lyles went over to him and said, "You got me, bro." And so at the end of the day, I got it wrong. That's the fact. But I had the courage of conviction to call it the way that I thought that it was. My mate sitting beside me, Addo Bolden, thought Kashane Thompson had won. And what I called incorrectly by 5,000ths of a second took more than a minute for officials, computers, photographs to determine who actually was the winner. So I got it wrong by 5,000ths of a second,
which is nothing.
So I can live with that.
Yeah.
Even though it became clickbait and I was the worst person in the world for 24 hours. It taught me a lot about myself. That because when the world's media is chopping you up into small pieces, that you can come back from that and you can survive, and adversity is part of all of our lives. To get back up the next day, put your clothes on and go back to work was the best medicine. And the best medicine was there were so many amazing races after that. Cole Hocker winning the men's 1500 in a shock, like in a surprise over Ingebrigtsen and Josh Kerr, and then Quincy Hall winning the men's 400. And, there were so many other amazing calls. Look, it is what it is. I've got to live with it. But the thing is, I didn't do something different. I didn't change the way that I call races. Everybody's an armchair expert, right? They're like, he should have said it's too close to call. Well, I believed my eyes, and but I got it wrong at the end of the day, and so it's not going to change the way that I do things. And my bosses, in fact, told me, don't change the way you do things. We love the way you're in that role because we love the way you do it, but it wasn't a nice experience, that's for sure. It wasn't a nice experience, but we live and learn, and you push on.
And you get to be in a movie with Brad Pitt at the end of the day. So, I mean, all these haters can just shut up, right? Basically, that's all we can say. The other thing I'll quickly ask, this isn't Olympic related, but I've just got to ask it for my own self-being and for Australian self-being. Oscar Piastri, Leigh Diffey, is he going to do it?
Yeah.
Is he going to break this 45-year drought and he's going to have a world champion in Formula One at the end of this year?
I think he will. I don't really like predicting, but just what I see in him, he's incredible. He's absolutely incredible. That, the tenacity that he showed last weekend in Austria was phenomenal. And he got screwed in qualifying when Gasly spun, so he didn't get to do his second qualifying lap. He didn't get to do his what potentially was going to be his best lap. And in his interview afterwards, I think David Coulthard was interviewing him after qualifying, and he just said, "Well, I can tell you this: I won't be finishing third tomorrow." So, and I just love that about him. That's that fighter, that Aussie fighter in him, and he's not an outlandish guy, but that determination, like he still looks like he's about 12.
I know, right?
But
it's scary.
that fire inside is just incredible, and I love it. I love the way he races. And I think we're as motorsport fans, we're being treated to a tremendous rivalry.
Yeah,
Lando's fantastic. But if I had to put them head to head, I think that Oscar's going to come out on top. And I don't think there's no coming. I don't think mid-season upgrades, whatever, after the summer break. I don't think anybody's turning their season around that dramatically where anyone's going to touch the McLaren pair. So we're going to be treated all the way to the end. And I hope that it goes pretty close to the end, and I'm finished with the NASCAR season, and I can book a plane ride somewhere to go and see the first Aussie world champion in 45 years. That'd be pretty cool. I think too, as you guys well know, I think too the big benefit for Oscar is having Mark Webber in his corner, and for everything that Mark endured and learnt, that he gets to put that all into Oscar. The good, the bad, the don't do this, the politics, how to duck and dive, and how to handle everything. And I just think Oscar has, he's got a great car, great team, great manager, great outlook, super talent. Why can't he be world champion? To me, he's got all the ingredients.
What a way to look at it. And one thing I noticed too here is that, I mean, we've been sport for choice in the last decade and a bit in Australia, obviously, with Mark and Daniel Ricciardo and sort of the talent we've had and the winners in Australia. But this is the first time I can ever remember as a Formula One fan, and not just because of the Netflix boom, but just general on the street people who are talking about Oscar Piastri, talking about Formula One. I've had people who I've known my entire life who know I watch Formula One, who never mentioned Mark Webber, never mentioned Daniel Ricciardo, but they now will say to me, "Oh, how'd Oscar do the other day?" Or, "Oh, that Aussie he's doing all right." So it almost seems that just your general everyday Aussie smells it in the water, Leigh, that this is going to happen this year.
That's good. That's good. If it feels right, it's usually right.
Exactly, so, right?
Let's go with that.
That's how we have it. Leigh, we close out every one of our interviews sort of 10 fun get-to-know-you questions. I'm going to have to tailor these slightly because obviously these are tailored towards Olympians, but I can fix it around a little bit here to help you out with some of these ones when it comes to it. So this one here, what's one thing you never leave home without when traveling to a competition? Let's change it up. What's one thing you never leave home without when traveling to a broadcast? I might have stumped him.
Phone charger.
Phone charger.
Oh, hang on. Sorry. That's a silly answer. My notes.
Your notes.
My notes. My homework.
Well, you got to make sure the phone's charged first to make sure that then if you need to get any extra notes that you can then
my notes.
Jump on.
Or if I ever left without my folder or my notes, my computer, I'd have a heart attack.
Are you still like old school, like pen paper, Bruce McAvaney style with your notes as well?
You know what? I get so frustrated with myself that I want to so badly be electronic, and I just can't be. I can't be. I mean, I print a bunch of stuff out, but I have to. We have especially on the Olympic side of things at NBC, we have an amazing research department who furnish us with so many just crazy things, amazing things. But when I read it, I then have to handwrite notes because if I do that, I'll remember it. And quite often I don't have to go back and read it again. I'll highlight and then I'll handwrite, and then that is my way of knowing that it's in there. If I type it, I don't know what the disconnect is. Like if I had a tablet, I just don't think it would be the same. And I get so frustrated because I carry around so much crap with me, so much paper. But that's the way that it works for me. And even last year on NASCAR, I was like, right, I'm going to make a change. I'm going to get really organized. And I bought myself a tablet. It wasn't an iPad. It was like one of those ones that you can write on. And the first flight going to Daytona, I had a connection in Charlotte or Atlanta or somewhere. I left it in the seat back pocket.
Damn.
So that was kind of the world telling me just stick to your paper and handwriting.
Stick to pen and paper. There you go. I like that, Leigh. I've got notes in front. I'm the same. It's like I try to switch over, like calendars, for example. It's like, oh, I'm going to use Google Meet and that. No, I just have to have a diary. I've got to write things down. I'm exactly the same. So I completely get you with that. A tradition. Do you have a traditional superstition that you follow before any of your broadcasts at all?
I always like to, they kill our mic at a certain point, getting close to going on air. But when the mics are still open, I always like to say it on an open mic so the camera people can hear it, the production truck can hear it, my on-air colleagues. I love wishing everybody a great day. Like, let's go get them, let's kick ass, everybody have a fun show. Or I'll hit the talk back button back to the production truck. Just like to lift everybody's spirits. We always fist pump before we go, like when I do Supercross with Ricky Carmichael or with Addo, Sonia, track and field with Cara. The whole team always fist pumps, and so there's always, I wouldn't say one specific thing, but the umbrella is positivity and energy to get everybody lifted before you go on air.
I like that.
And like it's basically like saying, have a great day. Let's help each other. Let's have each other's back. Let's go and do a great broadcast for the fans,
Love it. I love hearing that. Do you have a song that is on every one of your, I guess, pre-broadcast playlists? This might not exactly work too well in the commentary booth versus a on-track meet, but I mean, do you pump yourself up with any music sort of in the lead up to any big event that you're calling at all?
No, not necessarily. No, I don't have a go-to song, and quite often in the rental car, I'll make myself change stations, go from country station to a pop station to a maybe an old rock station. I don't know. I mix it up as much.
Change it up a little bit.
Yeah, I don't have a set go-to pump up song. If there's one thing, and I don't listen to it all the same, but there was a really an old British band years ago called M People. Kind of like, electronic
moving on
pop
up type. Yeah,
moving on up.
Yeah, yep.
Well, so the lead singer of that band was called Heather Small. She's still around in the UK, but she has a song that's called Proud.
Yes.
And the lyrics are, what have you done today to make yourself feel proud?
Yeah.
And I like that. I like that message.
Great song.
Not that I listen.
Great
That's not a pre-broadcast pump up, but I do like that. I do like the meaning of that song.
Yeah. I like that too. No, I said we're learning a lot here, Leigh. I love these sort of different ones here. The most unexpected or funny DM that you have ever gotten? Do people reach out to you much at all after your commentary? And send you. And what's the weirdest one you've ever gotten?
Oh, there's some weird ones. There's some very strange ones, and there's some abusive ones too. But sometimes it's to do stuff like this. It's people who DM you, say, I do this show. Can you come on? I'd love to speak. Or I can't think of a. I actually I'll tell you one. I still have not met him or his wife in the flesh, but over DM, I became social media friends with an astronaut.
Oh,
and his name is Drew Fustel. He did I think as many as 6 missions in outer space.
Wow.
He lived on the International Space Station for 6 months. And a massive motorsport fan. And he and his wife Indira are just lovely people. And when Drew was on the ISS and we were doing Formula One, he would each time, like when he's going around the Earth, he would, from outer space, he would take an image of the racetrack that was the Grand Prix that weekend.
Wow.
And so if it was the Spanish Grand Prix, when he knew that he was going to be above Barcelona, he would take an image of Circuit de Barcelona, Catalunya. So I don't think that's a weird DM. I think that's a cool DM.
That is the coolest DM ever.
and by the way, he was communicating from the International Space Station.
He's sending you messages going, hey, Leigh, above Barcelona, here's the track.
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's insane.
Yeah. So that was pretty cool.
Jeez, yeah, no, that wins that question. Right now you're leading. If we were ranking the answers we've had for this, that's on top. That's insane. Everyone else can have their foot fetishes and sugar mummies. I'm having the astronauts sending you pictures of the tracks. That's incredible. The weirdest thing that you've ever eaten at an international event, and did you like it? I feel like if we might get some Beijing answers. I don't know. China always comes up on this one. This is always...
Shanghai, when we were there for V8s. Do you remember when the V8s went to Shanghai?
I do.
Like in 05 or 06?
Not long after the F1 went there, right? That was pretty soon after that.
We had some meals there that I don't even know what we ate. Like it was interesting, and lots of chili. And for your audience who listen and have been to China, everybody knows that the authentic Chinese is not like the Chinese we think of, right?
Mm-hmm.
You know, so there was some pretty wild things we ate there, but I think the chili disguised it, whatever it was. But yeah, nothing else. You know, I do have, this isn't bizarre. This is just kind of funny because it reminded me of an Aussie meat pie, the first ever track and field meet that I did, which was the Penn Relays. And when I first got to meet Addo Bolden and the Jamaican track fans are just so loud and so passionate and playing their drums in the stands for all the Jamaican athletes. And Addo says to me, I'll be back in a minute. I'm just going to get a Jamaican beef patty. And I said, what's a Jamaican beef patty? He's like, come on, you don't know what that is? Anyway, so he brings me a Jamaican beef patty back. And it was just kind of like a smaller version of an Aussie meat pie squashed down into a patty, but spicy. And so Addo got me hooked on those, and he's like, you like that, don't you? He goes, that reminds you of a meat pie, doesn't it?
Wow. That's incredible. Do you miss the meat pie, Leigh? Because I know America doesn't really do meat pies, do they?
They don't do meat pies, but you got to know where to find them. And in Manhattan, there's a place called the Burke Street Bakery.
Mm-hmm.
They do them. And a mate of mine, Eddie Buckingham, who's a really successful Aussie restaurateur in New York City, he has just opened up a 3-story Aussie pub and restaurant called Old Mates.
Yeah.
And it's fantastic.
It is, isn't it?
So, yeah, so I went there. We have a thing every November where myself and some Aussie mates, we have what's called the Aussie Mafia get-together and in New York City. And Eddie took us there when he just got the keys. And it was pretty run down. Whoever was in there previous, was still leftover bits and pieces from there. And he was giving us his vision of what it was going to look like. And I'm so proud of him for what he's created. It's incredible.
It's a great pub. And I have a funny story with that. I was living in New York I was about to leave just as it opened. And so my friend was in the city. So we were going to the opening night on the Friday, which of course, like they basically had to close the doors because it was that packed. The night before, I'd gone to a Knicks game and I'd gotten on the subway. And as I'm waiting at the subway, I kind of hear Australian accents. And as you know, you hear Australian accents, you automatically, I'm in America, this is different. I look over and I'm like, that kind of looks like Hamish and Andy. Look again. It is Hamish and Andy. So I'm there on the subway and I got talking to Hamish and Andy in New York City about them, obviously Andy involved in the pub, Hamish, the next night. It was just this weird little moment of like Australians and this sort of Australian pub opening, which kind of then turned out to be an epic opening night for them. So it's a great venue. It really is.
Yeah.
Any Australian who's in New York, get to Old Mates. And it seems every time I see on social media, they've just gotten Hugh Jackman went there recently, Paddy Mills, like Leigh Diffey, movie star. I mean, like everybody's going there. So I mean, it's the place to be, it seems.
And Brock, the manager, is a good Queensland guy from the Gold Coast.
There you go.
There's Aussies everywhere.
That's what we want to. That's what we want to hear. Speaking of food, back to the food. Do you have a guilty pleasure meal that, like, after you've had a big event, you've done Indy, you've done the Olympics, do you just kind of go, all right, I need to chow down now, relax, give me my go-to food?
Anything Asian. Anything Asian. Love Asian food. And then, it depends on where you are. But any city, as you know, here in the States, they do their big steakhouses well. Mm-hmm. So to go and have a nice piece of steak and a nice glass of red wine, that's pretty good. That's always a nice way to relax. So,
good answer.
And for whatever team that I've been a part of, whether it be an Olympic team, a track team, a motorsport team, there's always really good group team camaraderie. And so one of the best things about, people always say, do you get sick of traveling and all that? And, travel does wear you thin sometimes, but the best part about it is the on-road camaraderie with your on-road family, because you spend so much time away from your own family. You need to make sure you have a family on the road. And so those meals on the road, look, we're already planning it this week in Eugene, Oregon. We've got a favorite restaurant, and we've already made a reservation. And so we're looking forward to, because everyone scatters in different directions. Everybody's got what they've got going on. And then when we come back together, it's just so wonderful that you just catch up as a team again. And then within the next day or two, you're on air together, doing what we do. But it's that on the road camaraderie and meals that are really special.
I love that you got a favorite restaurant basically there. So they're looking forward to having you there this weekend, essentially, Leigh. Now I'm going to change this one up slightly. because generally we ask our guests what sport they would swap if they could as as an Olympian. What other Olympic sport would they do? So I'm going to ask you, Leigh, if there was another sport that you could commentate the entire world, is there a sport that maybe you've always thought, like, I would like to, that, or an event, a sport or an event that you would love to commentate?
Yeah, for sure. That's easy. AFL. And I say that because my late dad, my brother, my sister, all Victorian. Mum and I are the Queenslanders. And so I grew up on a healthy diet of what was then VFL, then became AFL. And to this day, I'm a very passionate Carlton fan.
Welcome to the show every week, Leigh. You can stay. We can commiserate the pain together, can't we?
What is happening?
I know.
Anyway, so I grew up on a very healthy diet and of Aussie rules. And then when I was a teenager, I played Aussie rules at school and for a club. And the school that I went to in Brisbane at high school, there was like a separate, towards my last couple of years, they formed a separate kind of autonomous department or opportunity for, there was an AFL School of Excellence. And so one of the key people involved in that was a former Hawthorn player called Rod Lester-Smith. So for just the regular school kids, which I was a part of, I played back pocket for the school team. Rod Lester-Smith was our high school footy coach.
Wow.
And I've just loved AFL. And, if I could wave a magic wand, I'd love to call a game. That's not possible. You need to be so immersed in certainly the Victorian or South Australian culture and mindset. That ship sailed for me. But I just love the flow of the game. I love how just the dynamics of an AFL game and the flow, and that'd be pretty exhilarating to call a big AFL match.
Well, I know Mason Cox is a bit of an imprint over in his homeland. Essentially, did a bit of media back during COVID. He was at the F1 movie premiere here in Melbourne a few weeks ago. He loves his motorsport. So I'm just thinking that if you can get connected with Mason to do something motorsport related with you there on NBC, he might be able to get a few, wheels in motion to come back. Get in maybe NBC to do some couple of footy games in the wee hours of the morning. I don't know. I'm just trying to work some connections there, and maybe then get Mason to not be a Collingwood player, and then
there you go.
Things will be a little bit better that way. I'm not going to ask this next question because you're in a movie. The next question is, if your Olympic journey were a movie, what would the title be and who would play you? I'm not going to ask that because you're in a movie. We've talked about that. It's not about Leigh Diffey, but you're still in a movie. Yeah. So we're scrapping that question. The last two we got here, Leigh. What is the one question you're tired of being asked, and what is the one that you wish people would ask you instead?
Well, this is specifically, even though I've been away, for over 20 years, that probably the most common question that I get asked is from home, from Aussies, is that, when are you coming home? It's like, been gone a long time. This is my home. My kids were born here, and this is my home for now. I was born and raised in Australia. I will always be a proud Aussie. But that's a hard question to answer, and especially the further out it gets. It's like, I don't know. Like, do you want me to ask you, where you're going on vacation in 10 years' time? Or I don't know. I don't know where life's going to take me, but I can tell you for right now, this is home, and it has been, for a long time. And we got kids in high school who'll be going to college here in the next few years, and so that one, it's not a hard question. It's just, it's almost, it hurts because I can't be in two places at once, and I love Australia for being born and raised there and everything that Australia has made me, but I also have to be cognizant of the fact that this place has given me, the heights of my career. So it's a delicate balancing act. So when, friends and family ask me that, I find that question very difficult to tend to.
Is there one that you wish people would, like, do you get often people contacting you maybe about advice for getting into broadcasting, or like if somebody was to ask you one question that would help them, what do you think that would be?
Yeah, I don't mind that question. I don't mind that question because I remember when I was young, and I would talk to anybody who would listen, and the answer that I give young aspiring broadcasters or journalists or whatever is that things are different now to when I came up, mainly because of this.
Yeah.
You know, you got this, which you can do voiceovers on. You can video. Everybody's a selfie expert. You know, you do your own production now. That didn't exist. You know, I did a commentary, a motocross commentary gig at Conondale on the Sunshine Coast hinterland, and a Brisbane community TV station were there filming it, and asked me would I mind doing an intro on television, like on camera from my outdoor commentary perch. And I wore a nice shirt, and I used that as my show reel. You know, these days you can make your own show reel. You know,
yeah.
When our kids were, I don't know, when our kids were about 10 years old, 11 years old, they were editing, you know, themselves. And so I don't mind that question, because I say use the tools that you've got around you, and if you're passionate about something in particular, then focus on that, because enthusiasm always wins out. You know, I was lucky that I knew motorsport, and mainly motorcycles to begin with, before I ever went to cars, and but I always had that passion for the sport, and then that's what got me in. I didn't go to college to study communications or journalism. You know, I was a PE teacher, but my commentary, the public address commentary, and my contact enabled me to be put in front of the right people at the right time, and a lot of hard work and a lot of opportunity, and recognizing and acting on those opportunities is the vehicle that got me.
You know, it reminds me of, reminds me of Leigh, hearing all that story. The great Murray Walker, very similar background he had getting into his career. So there you go. What a man he was, of course, too. Last one I've got for you, Leigh. What's one lesson you've learnt more from losing that has shaped you more than winning? And tailor that however you want to commentary rather than athleticness.
It's probably when you don't get something that you thought you had a really good shot at getting, like a commentary position. And I'm not talking about now, because I've been with NBC for 13 years, but it was when I was a freelancer, and you were going for, you know, opportunities, and then, you know, you didn't get it, and you know, the person who did get it, you know, you think you might be able to do a better job than them or whatever. Well, it doesn't matter. You didn't get it. So get over it and try and make yourself better, so that next time the answer is yes instead of no. You know, there's been some key times in my career where I thought for sure that I had an opportunity, and one that could have been like a really big game changer, and it didn't work out. And I think you learn a lot from those, and just how to, you know, it's a punch in the face or it's a punch in the gut, and you got to withstand that, and then get on with it.
Great message. And I guarantee you, any of those people who beat you to any other jobs didn't get images sent to them from space over social media. So you win. I'm sorry, Leigh, but you win at the end of the day. People want to follow your journey, Leigh, social media, anywhere that people, outside of obviously hearing your voice and seeing you on NBC, where else can people stay up to date with what you've got going on in life?
Yeah, it's just the same on Twitter and Instagram. It's just at Leigh Diffey. Spelled like a girl, Leigh. I always ask my mum and dad, why did you do that to me? But anyway, I try and do my best on social media, but yeah, it's fun interacting with people, and you always get some interesting things on there. So yeah, we'll continue the ride. See if we can keep it going for a little bit longer.
Well, I guarantee you will, Leigh, because I think you've got obviously 7 years now to push towards the home city Olympics, and I think if that's not going to drive you, then nothing much will. But really appreciate your time here off the podium. Best of luck with it all, and hopefully we'll see you down here soon for those Olympics. And otherwise, you stay home right there in the US, because that is your home right now, Leigh.
Thank you. Really, really great chatting. Appreciate your questions and your insight, and yeah, it's fun. It's fun to relive those early days, because, you know, sometimes it seems like yesterday, and then other times it seems like so long ago. But thanks for a great line of questioning.